Hi, I'm Kathy Rushing, host of the podcast Committed, the Entrepreneur Marriage. If your middle name is Restless and you identify with words like innovator, dreamer, changemaker, creative, independent, or you are married to an entrepreneur, or heaven help you, you're both entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. The entrepreneurial journey can be a little wild at times, like uncharted territory. Join me as I talk with others who are at various stages of the entrepreneur process. We'll explore the wisdom and insights they have gained while navigating the ups and downs of the entrepreneur journey. You'll discover that there are many couples who have found ways to thrive in both their marriage and business. My guests today are Shannon and Bryan Miles. They are the co-founders of Belay Solutions, which provides virtual support services for business owners. They were recently listed in the Inc. 5000 for the 6th year in a row. Way to go, guys. As if that achievement isn't enough, they have managed to create a thriving marriage while running Belay together. Their company has evolved since they began 10 years ago, but their focus has always been to have a great marriage, a priority they place ahead of a great business. These are my people. In the fall of 2019, they opened NoFo Brew Co and Distillery in Cumming, Georgia. And in the year that shall not be named or repeated, God willing, they launched Own, Not Run, a consultancy for people in various stages of the entrepreneur journey. They are rich with wisdom for entrepreneur marriages, so let's get right into it. Hi, Bryan and Shannon Miles. I want to welcome you to the podcast Committed, the Entrepreneur Marriage. How are you guys doing this afternoon?
So good. Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I am thrilled to have you as my guests. So we're going to jump right in with a couple of questions I've been using recently that I think have been kind of fun and a great way to get to know you a little bit. If your marriage was a team sport, what would it be?
I love this question. I don't know if it's a sport so much, but I kind of got the image of like whitewater rafting.
Oh.
It's something that we actually enjoy doing, but also if you don't paddle, like you don't put your paddle in the water when you're going over the rapids, you're going to fall out of the boat. And our marriage definitely takes both of us like digging in and doing the work all the time. So that's the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay.
I think for me, I think of doubles ping pong. Because you have to alternate shots, and you have to work together to beat your opponent, and it's a good tandem sport, I think. And I'm good at ping pong.
You are really good. You can carry both of us, actually.
I love that. What is a book or a person that has affirmed your perspective in life, marriage, or business?
The book, I think, that has impacted our marriage and I guess affirmed it after we implemented the principles of it is 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family by Pat Lencioni. It's basically, it distills down business principles so that you can apply them to your family with the premise of if you ran your family with such intention as you do your business, your families might be in a better place. So yeah, that's been really tangible for the Miles family.
Yeah, I would echo that too. That's been a really powerful book for our family.
Yeah.
I have read a lot of his work, but I'm not familiar with that one. And I think did it come out like in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because it's one of those books, he's such a prolific business writer that he did this book more or less for himself and his family too. At least that's what he said to us. So it's come out in the last 10 years. It's got a yellow cover. It's a really great read.
It's definitely not one of his most popular books, but it is it's very similar to his popular books in the sense it's a fable. So his books are easy to read, puts the cookies on the low shelf for you. But if you're familiar with his business work, this book is going to feel very comfortable to you, but also a little challenging too, to apply this to your family.
Oh, I love that so much. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe the other?
For me, I would say Shannon is very intelligent, incredibly caring, and it's direct.
Ooh.
That's concise. That's the word I was actually trying to say.
Concise? Okay.
She likes to kind of hit the essence of things and not beat around the bush. And I do. The older I get, the more I appreciate that.
Oh,
And of course,
nice.
you got other adjectives that are like beautiful and things like that, but I'll stop there.
Beautiful is always good, right, Shannon?
Thank you. You are very tenacious, adventurous, and intense in a good way. Like when Brian puts his mind to something, it happens. And it's been a very good thing for our family.
Yeah.
And business, right?
Business. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Tell me a little bit about what the rhythm of your family looks like currently, rhythm of family and work.
Yeah, I mean, Brian and I have been married for 23 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We have definitely gone through different rhythms throughout the course of those decades together. But currently we have a almost 15-year-old daughter who's in high school and a 12-year-old son who just started middle school. And so we just started a new rhythm, with them going back to school face to face. So you want to share with them like every day?
Yeah, in the mornings we get up, we have time with them briefly before they head out the door for school. And then, Shannon, I think, does a really great job to be just kind of around and available. And I try and do the same, just kind of hearing them. I even was commenting today, I take our daughter to school some days and it's like a coaching session in the car with her, which is really cool, because I have her undivided attention for a few minutes.
Uh-huh.
And then, we go through our day, we work together, obviously, and we have many different things we do throughout the day. And then they come back in the afternoon after school and they've got various activities or homework. And then we do our very best to have family at a table together, no tech, and just engage as a family as best we can. That we don't always get it right or perfect. And then generally the evening wraps up with a show we like to watch together, or they're hanging out doing homework or something like that. We're pretty normal in that sense of just like every family. Yeah. Coronavirus and the pandemic made it a lot more goofy for a while, but we're certainly, I think we have a good rhythm with our family of 4.
We're in a good place right now.
Yeah. Are you guys working from home currently, or do you go into Belay?
It's funny. Belay doesn't have an office at all.
Okay.
It's
all virtual.
We've always been virtual. So from that perspective, we were well prepared for our current environment. So this is our office, we sit side by side. We have freedom to move around the house a little bit, but we've done Zoom meetings since the day Zoom came out. And before that it was GoToMeeting, like we've just always, video chatting is very much a part of our rhythm. Our meetings with our teams are almost always remote. We do own, with a partner of ours, a brewery down the road. So sometimes we'll go there and have meetings too, which is kind of a fun place to meet.
Over beer, of course.
Over beer, of course. And I like the work from home thing has just been a part of our professional lives for the last decade. So it feels very natural for us.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's jump back to the beginning. I want to hear a little bit about how you guys met and how long you said you've been married 23 years. Yeah. So how did you guys meet?
2 years before this, 23, we met in college. Shannon was a freshman and I was a junior in college. And we went to a small school up in the middle of Ohio, north of Columbus. And it was actually move-in day. for her freshman year that I met her and a friend had invited her to go bridge jumping, which was something that we did because, in a small town in Ohio, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and
see a pattern here, bridge jumping,
yeah,
whitewater rafting.
pretty adventurous folks.
Yeah.
But so we had an opportunity to meet that day, and that was just a really cool experience. And I of course I was struck by how pretty she was, and I wanted to spend time around her. So that was a pretty cool. But that's how we met, was jumping off bridges, and we've been jumping off bridges ever since.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so how did that lead to marriage?
We hit it off right away. I don't know that either of us were looking to get married that young, but we just felt like we're going to be together forever. So why wait? And we got engaged the spring after we met. And then we got married a little over a year after that. So in 97. And it's funny, we don't always share this story on podcasts, but we actually think we first saw each other even 2 years prior to that first like bridge jumping introduction, because Brian he worked for a lawn mowing company and I was a waitress at the little town like an hour from our college. And he said, I went in there and had a lunch break from trimming, cemeteries actually.
Oh, goodness.
And he's like, there was this young girl in there. She was so cute. I was like, I was the only young person that worked there. So it had to be me. So I think from, early on, we realized we were always meant to be together.
We intersected paths earlier than what we ever thought. Yeah. And then there was another time where she was set up on a blind date with a good friend of mine. And I went with him to meet her. I thought, wow, she's cute. But of course, I'll step in or anything.
I was the first friend.
But then, of course, we met again in college and we kind of connected the dots that we had intersected paths a few times before that.
Oh, that's funny. I can remember in college, there was this idea that there was one right person for you. And I used to kind of panic over that. Like, what if they were on the bus and I missed the bus that day? So I guess your story is a reminder that if your paths are intended to cross, it will happen.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So you got married in college?
We did.
You were still in college, Shannon?
Yeah. What happened was about 3-4 months after I met Shannon in the fall of 95, my dad developed lung cancer.
Yeah.
And so kind of through a series of events, I decided that the best thing to do was to basically leave school full time, work full time, and then go to school full time at night. And then Shannon remained as a traditional student, and she worked a part-time job during that time as well. But kind of in that season, I already felt like a grown-up. I was already responsible for who I was. And so
paying for school,
it just seemed like, okay, let's go to the next level. Let's get married. And of course, it was way more romantic than that, how I got down on one knee. But it just, it was one of those things where I was ready to kind of grow up and do grow up things and get married.
Yeah. It's a refreshing reminder because I meet so many young couples that they're trying to get all their ducks in a row. They want to finish college, have a first job for 10 years, have their house paid off. I mean, I'm being a little extreme, but it's like they want all of these things done before they marry. And your marriage is an example that you learn a lot about each other going through these difficult times. And I was listening to one of your interviews yesterday and heard you talking about both of your dad, Brian, and your stepdad, Shannon, both developed lung cancer and died within a year of each other. Is that the timing?
Crazy. Yeah, it was a crazy time.
Man, I mean, that is...
Or we had just graduated from college.
Just after college, so young.
Yeah. And I think, looking back on that, it forced me especially just to kind of grow up and just realize that, no one's going to hand you anything. You got to work really hard for things. And, and it was terrible seeing our father struggle and our families as a whole struggle through that experience. But it was something that, I look back on it, and as horrific as that was for our family, I'm thankful it kind of molded me into the person and the man that I am today.
We say oftentimes that we raised each other. I mean, really, because we were still babies like you guys were, we got married. And I think that our path is our path. And I don't know that I would recommend it for anybody else. Like, would I want our kids getting married at 19 and 20? Probably not. But I don't know if it's any harder or any easier. Like, I don't know if you enter into a relationship 10 years after that and get married, if that means it's going to be an easier path. I think every marriage, regardless of when you start it, is going to have struggles that you have to work through together. And hopefully you can, grow and learn from those experiences in the same way, and, not have those divide you, but it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, you're taking two people that are very single-minded in their own lives. It's always, up until that point of marriage, it's been more or less about them. And then you're basically saying, I'm dying to myself, and I'm really, it's more about you than it is me. And that's a clash that takes a while to kind of get through that. So whether that's you're 30 or 20, it's going to happen. You have to sort that through.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. How long had you guys been married then when you decided to take this launch? And tell us a little bit about your decision and the timing of your first business.
Yeah, it was 2010. In the spring of 2010, our kids at the time were 2 and 5, and I was traveling like crazy. I was on 6 to 8 flights a week. It was just too much. I wasn't home nearly as much as I should, and it was a great job, but it just demanded that I was away. And then at the same time, Shannon had a really great job and a great career. We kind of got this place in the spring of 2010 where we hit a tipping point of like, something's got to change here career wise.
Yeah, our kids were 2 and 5 at the time. And I had been with my company for a decade, and I loved it for a long time. I learned a lot. I had 3 different roles in the organization that were all very different. And it was a great professional experience for me. But for the first time at that job, there was no clear next step. Like, that had never happened before in a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So I was feeling like, okay, it's time to make a change, but there was no next step within that organization. And it was healthcare software. And so I could have made a leap to another company that was, same company or different company, same problems kind of thing. And I just, at the end of the day, felt like that was not the change that God was calling me to. So we both at the same time, and for different reasons, came to a place where we were needing to wind up where we were. And in the back of our minds, we had always known we wanted to have a business together, and even had some failed attempts earlier on in our marriage to do that. But we were like, you know what, if we're ever going to do it and give ourselves some runway to fail, it's now, while we're in our early to mid 30s. Mm-hmm. And so that was sort of like the mindset that allowed us to feel confident to take the leap later that year.
We took a vacation together, and I was exhausted because I'd been traveling so much, but I took a book. It's a story of Sam Walton. It's called Made in America. Okay. And it's basically how he started Walmart. And I realized in reading that book that he was 38 years old when he started Walmart. And at the time I was 35, and I thought, well, heck, if he could start Walmart at 38, Mm-hmm. And I've come to realize now it doesn't matter how old you are, you can start a business that's successful. But back then that gave me just enough of a nudge to say, you can do this, Mm-hmm. And so we cashed out our 401ks, not advice we tell people to do.
Once again, story, not necessarily recommendation.
It was $150,000, and we used that as our startup capital to fund our business. And Mm-hmm. we started that in December of 2010 after doing a lot of due diligence over about 6 months, saying, okay, let's get our ducks in a row. Let's talk to really smart advisors and business people. Let's really make sure this is a wise move and a calculated decision. And then we gave our notice October 1st of 2010.
Okay. So you're vetting, if you will, talking to other business people, I'm assuming, or were these family members, or what type of?
Family and friends thought we were nuts. They were like, why the would we leave nice job for babies and do this in the height of the Great Recession? And,
right, 2010.
Yeah. So we didn't have a good answer for them, but when we told our ideas to people who were successful in business and that had proven track records in business, they all thought it was a great idea. Mm-hmm. Especially one person in particular basically said, you need to quit your job and go do this. And a lot of that too, we've come to realize, and it's just one of those things that, people who are business owners, the lens in which they operate is different than a person that receives a paycheck.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just the lens in which the worldview they have is entirely different. So we leaned into that and that season, and it was really helpful for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a little something to the wiring, I think, of a person. We'll get into that hopefully in a little bit. So this first business, you said that you had tried a couple of businesses prior to this?
We did. We tried one, and it
One?
failed. It was way back. Let's see, it would have been in 2002. We tried to start a mortgage company, and it just did not work for a myriad of reasons. We had the wrong leader in place. We put it in the wrong location. There was just
saturated market.
It just was it just was a bloodbath in that sense. So we lost about $40,000, and we continued to work for other people.
Fortunately, we didn't quit our jobs to start that one,
right.
So we could bounce back pretty quickly. But yeah, that we definitely, and it's funny, Brian's mom even told him a few years ago, when he was a kid, he didn't want to work for anybody else. He wanted to have his own business. And I think that speaks to the wiring. I don't know that would have been the case for me had I not met Brian and our lives become one. He was much more willing to take the risk and had the fortitude for it. And we had been married long enough and, had different professional careers, and I could see his strengths that, would be contributing to the business, that I felt comfortable. But yeah, just wiring, he's definitely more entrepreneurial minded for sure.
Okay. I am really interested to hear about the fact that you're both in the business. You helped start it. You were completely invested in it. I think you're the first couple that I've interviewed so far that are co-founders.
Mm-hmm.
All of my other ones, one person is the entrepreneur and the other supports them, but they're not in or part of the business.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear early on, how did you guys sort out your roles and what each of you were going to be responsible for?
We hear that a lot. Like, I could never work with my spouse. There's no way. Like, I'm glad they're doing it, but not for me. It's just, we wanted to be 100% in this thing together. So we had to figure out pretty early on what our lanes were. And fortunately, God's wired us different with different personalities, giftings, leadership styles that are complementary to each other. And so I think we've probably gone through about 3 different iterations of our roles within Belay.
Okay.
As the business grew and evolved as its own entity. But yeah, early on, defining those roles was really key.
We're incredibly different people, and that's, whereas it used to be annoying in the beginning, it's actually celebrated now, but we're two different people, and that's great. And it also comes that way in terms of leadership or skill set. So the default to her is really natural for me now, especially in areas of operation or legal things, like she's just got a mind and she's wired for that. And I'm not. I'm more sales, marketing, vision, out ahead, 18 months out, looking at what's next, that type of thing. And she does a good job to default to me there. So I think we just know each other's lanes. And rather than try and have that be something that's competitive, we just default to it naturally and say, hey, this is your gifting. Whatever you say, that's what we'll do. Yeah. And, it's not like you just day one figure that out. It took us a while to realize our strengths, and, because she had a really great career and I had a really great career before we started this thing. So the way I approached it in the early days was I knew, because she would share with me a complexity around what she did before we started our company. So I thought, wow, that's the type of person I'm going to get the opportunity to work with on a day-to-day basis.
If I don't hire her, I'm going to have to hire someone else.
For sure. Yeah. But I mean, her knowing the experience she brought to the table, I'm like, I'm fortunate to work with a person like that. And I carried my own set of skill sets to the business. So absolutely. I think, just appreciating and acknowledging that, your spouse in this case, as your partner in business, is probably well more equipped to answer a question or to do that particular aspect of the business than you are. It frees you up to stay focused on the things you're best at.
So early on, There were probably challenges. There always are in a startup. How long was it before you knew that this business was viable?
Well, we didn't have any challenges at all. I mean, we were
Your nose is growing, Brian.
yeah,
And everybody's like, and I'm not going to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
we had the perfect business from day one. No, I think that the reason why they refer to early startup or as early struggle is because that's what it is. It's meant to be early struggle. Every business has a season of early struggle, and it's fraught with changes. And okay, we were going this direction, and we're going this direction. The market doesn't want this product. The market wants this product. The pricing's off. There's this myriad of things you have to kind of iron out, and if you lose your business if you don't pay attention and shift. And so with that just came a season of kind of turmoil.
Yeah.
I remember being in 2012, so, a year and a half in, having what I thought was a heart attack.
Oh, gosh.
And I was stressed out, and that's
working crazy hours.
Yeah. And there was our kids got sick during that time, and our health insurance was a hot mess because we were starting our company and we were funding all that. And I just, ultimately, I didn't have a heart attack. I just was thoroughly stressed. But I had to get to a place for me personally where I had to say, okay, I'm going to have to start really yielding up and delegating things that I've been holding on to. And that was definitely a pivotal moment for me as a leader in our business.
I think when we knew we really had something is when the business started making money. Like, we had invested our 401ks to fund it, and we could see that balance depleting over time. And so it wasn't until we started to turn a profit we're like, okay, we might actually have something here, because like a lot of entrepreneurs in the beginning, you try a lot of things because you have ideas of what will work, but until you go to market with something, you don't know for sure if anybody's going to buy your idea, or if they, or if you have to modify it. So we tried several things early on that just didn't work. They were not viable, but it didn't mean that the business wasn't viable. It meant those offerings weren't viable. Right. So we just doubled down on what was working and really started to get some good momentum around 14 months in.
About 14 months. Okay. I hear from several entrepreneur couples that are in that early stage, and they're worried that either the business or their marriage isn't going to make it. And again, these are couples where they're not both in it, as you guys are and were. What are some things that you did in your marriage to buoy it up, to strengthen it, to keep communication open and not take out this frustration on each other?
Something that I don't remember if you came up with this or you read it somewhere, but we've implemented it in our business and our life, and it's been really helpful. And it's the concept of sitting on the same side of the table when you're addressing an issue or a problem. So as opposed to, like you said, taking your frustration out on one another, you might be facing a couple or a problem as a couple or in the business that you need to literally have an illustration and take it and put it on one side of the table. And then the two of us sit on the other side of the table and say, how are we going to tackle this together? And that redirects the negative energy from coming out against each other to let's channel that to solve the problem. And you're not the problem and I'm not the problem. That's the problem over there on the other side of the table.
Yeah, we never started a business with that being the eventual outcome. Our eventual outcome is to have a great marriage. And so the business just helps support that, and our family too.
Yeah.
That what we're aiming at is far past a successful business or companies. It's, we're happy and we're together and we're healthy in our 70s and 80s, and our kids are grown adults and they like each other and they're contributing to this world in a good way. And we all have a good family relationship, and we have the financial means to be able to do things like that. A business is a vehicle for that to happen. But we've just chosen that the things that we're aiming at are way past what a company or a business can be.
Yeah. I have sought out couples like you guys because that is the drum that I beat all the time. I am very convinced that you can have a successful business and marriage. And yet we hear so often, or we see modeled, or we hear stories of, say, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Incredibly brilliant creator, entrepreneur. I love all of my Apple products, but at what cost?
Right.
And I think we believe sometimes, too often, that you have to sacrifice your family if you want to have a successful business. So that is part of why I chased you guys down and found you. And I want that story to be part of other couples' successful family.
I think that
our heart too.
Yeah, definitely. I think that it's just easy to accidentally prioritize something that feels so big, like a business, and make that a priority and make that the universe. When the reality is that ultimately the things that you're striving for in life are more relational and healthy in that sense, and a business is just simply a vehicle to pull that off. And I think that when you right size that or you reprioritize that as a couple, and you're both getting in alignment over that, I think that you'll iron out and you'll make better decisions for your business that becomes more of a lasting solution for your family.
I mean, we had to decide early on, like, what the worst case scenario would be. And that was really helpful for me to get over the hurdle of deciding to start this together, because I thought, okay, let's see, what if we invest all this money and it fails and we lose all of our retirement? Okay, can we rebuild? As long as our marriage is intact and our kids are healthy, like, I've lived in a trailer before. I could live in a trailer again. It's not that, like, the worst case scenario isn't, financial. It would be like, would we be okay? And we got to the point where we're like, no, we can work through this. We can weather a failed business and still keep our marriage intact. If that's the worst thing that happens, we're going to be okay.
Yeah. And that is a helpful exercise, isn't it? To process what is the worst case scenario. You don't want to live there, but if you look at it and go through that exercise, like you said, Shannon, I've lived in a trailer. I can do it again. It's not the end of the world, but I would live in a tent with you versus live in a mansion without you.
Right.
Exactly.
And not everyone is that intentional. So,
well, I'll be honest. We meet a lot of business owners that they will start a business with no end in mind. Like they'll say, I don't know what I would do with my business. I don't know if I'd sell it. I don't know if I would give it to my kids. I don't, and we just don't operate like that. Shannon and I have always approached business to say, we start a company and here's the outcome we're aiming at. And we now own several businesses, and every one of those has got an outcome connected to it that we're aiming at, all for the purpose of benefiting the family and for a couple. And they support what we're doing as a relationship, not just because we want to have a bunch of companies. Like there's intent behind the ownership. And I would challenge any business owner, especially a business couple that's in business ownership, that they need to decide what they want to do with their businesses, because they're going to more than likely outlast that business itself.
Yeah. Let us into the mind of Brian and Shannon, and what does it look like when you're processing your next business? You guys started about a year ago, is that right? Your brewing company?
It opened, a year ago. We started about a year prior to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you've launched Own Not Run.
That's right. Yeah, and that's a content company to help business owners enjoy the freedom of owning their companies versus becoming a slave to it. And then we invest in some real estate. We have a holding company called Miles AG, where we invest in other entities. And Shannon and I sit on a handful of boards for companies and so forth.
Okay.
But yeah, we're fairly active people business wise.
Oh, the mind of an entrepreneur never rests. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
So what are the conversations like, or what are the questions that you ask when you're pursuing something like the brewing company or Own Not Run?
The impetus for the new companies that we either create ourselves or get involved in is they're usually primed to solve a problem. Like, Belay is a virtual services company that solves problems for growing organizations, but it is vastly different than NoFo Brew Co, which serves beer in our community.
But it solves a problem too.
It solves a problem, and definitely post-pandemic, People are thirsty.
Yeah.
I guess we're still in it. I'm over it. But anyway, that's a sidebar. But we would constantly go out to restaurants in our community and think, man, why isn't there a cool place to hang out? Like, somebody should really create a place where you could go on a date and get dressed up and like do something cool. Somebody should do that, right? So nobody did it. And we're like, okay, we're ready for our next thing. You know, we had been able to replace ourselves in a lot of different capacities at Belay, giving us a little bit more mental freedom to dream again. And for the brewery, we found a partner that was very passionate about craft beer and really spearheaded the effort so that we could own, not run, that business. And it was meeting a need in our community to provide something that our family would enjoy. And so many other families have come to enjoy it too. Like, we were just there today doing some work, and a guy came in and he's like the norm of the bar, right? So we met him the first time. I shouldn't say the bar. But, hey, thanks. This is my neighborhood hangout spot. And we're like, that's exactly why we did it.
Yeah.
You know, not all risk is qualified. You know, I think that, you know, encouraging people to really do the hard math, do the complex thinking on if this is a risk that's really worth it, and looking around the corners. Oftentimes, you know, business owners, they want to play a game of checkers, not chess, meaning, you know, it's not, the decisions you make are not face value decisions. There's so much that's wrapped around in complexity around it. And just looking past point A to point D or point F is very important, I think, when you're looking at risk. And so that's what we're doing through our holding company, is we qualify if these are things that would really make sense and kind of meet the criteria for how we would invest.
Okay. That's good to hear. When we talked about defining your roles early on, my mind went to assessments, personality assessments and profiles. You guys recently did a couple of posts about the Enneagram. And so I'd like to camp there for a few minutes. When did you start doing the Enneagram? And were there other assessments that you did prior to that?
Yeah, I was a double business and psych major in college. So I have always loved personality tests. And I think the prevailing one back in the day was Myers-Briggs. So that was probably the first one we did as a couple. Got a lot of value out of that. I think then the next wave of personality tests that we applied to ourselves and our businesses was DISC. That was a helpful tool as well. And then, you know, most recently, the, you know, prevailing ones are behind the Enneagram. I think I first came across it 3 years ago or so, when a friend of mine recommended it. She was actually my college roommate and co-psych major.
Oh.
She had come across it through Richard Rohr's work. And I just thought it was the most accurate depiction of personality that I had come across. It's funny. I've typed as different things though, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, in part because I think I don't know, I answer questions as I think they should be sometimes, instead of really looking back and getting to like natural tendencies. I can adapt pretty quickly. And so I think I skewed results sometimes because I was like in this like a high achiever mode. And I'm like, I'm a 3, for sure I'm a 3. And then I'd take it and I was like, wait, my motivation isn't always to win. So I don't know. It's gone through definitely some changes there, but it's been a really helpful tool for Brian and I both.
Mm-hmm. What do you identify with currently, Shannon?
7, the enthusiast.
7. Okay.
Yeah. And I think mostly because my motivator is to be happy, and that can change over time of what it takes to be happy. And I definitely find myself leaning more toward that number than any other one.
Gotcha. And you, Brian?
I'm an 8.
I thought so.
Yeah.
D on the disc.
Pardon me?
D on the disc.
High D, high I. Yeah. And on Myers-Briggs, I'm an INTJ.
Okay.
And I'm opposite, ENFP.
Yeah.
and a high S on the disc. Like we're always just
yeah, we're two very, opposite people, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life in my house would be very boring if we were both the same.
or we would challenge each other all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
I will say these, awareness of personalities and like the being aware that we are very different personalities early in our marriage was a source of frustration. Why can't he just see things the way I see them? Why don't we approach situations the same way? Why is our communication style so different? But through, a lot of years together and really working hard and different counseling sessions and things like that, we
Mhm.
stopped trying to make each other the other person.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that made all the difference. It sounds so obvious and so, elemental right now, but that was transitional for us. And some of our biggest frustrations were around when we were trying to behave in a way that was incongruent with our personality just to make the other person happy. So when we
Mhm.
let that go and gave each other freedom to be who we are, that alleviated a lot of tension in our marriage.
Mhm. Mhm. I see that a lot in marriage, that we think if someone loves me, they're gonna be just like me, or they're somehow gonna read my mind and just know what I need, and that's where I see the benefit of an assessment tool, and as you said, you've used at least 3, we've done the same thing. Trying to think if there's others. We've probably done, what was the Strengths Finder,
Sure.
was another piece.
Yeah.
And I find that more helpful with, like, a team. I can't even remember my top 5, so I can't remember someone else's. But we dug pretty deep into the DISC, 'cause I got certified in that several years ago to work. We used it as part of our hiring process in our business. But then we discovered the Enneagram, and what I like so much about the Enneagram is looking at your shadow side, the part that we don't always want to see or
Mhm.
are even aware of. And it's so important in leadership to know these parts of yourself that are not so shiny and bright. It's where we become more whole and more wholehearted, as Brown would say.
Mhm.
Curious about, so you discovered the Enneagram 3 years ago. If you had that tool when you started the business, do you think there's some benefit you would have gained from knowing all of those, like what you do under stress, which is different for each of you?
Mhm. Mhm. When we first started the business, we used DISC, and there's a corollary, I think, in DISC that you could speak to way better
Mhm.
than I could. But the whole concept of you're natural and adaptive, and
Mhm.
how if you have to live in your adaptive number for too long in your role, then you're going to burn out, and it's not
Right.
sustainable. And so
Mhm.
for the Enneagram, I think the correlation is, how you show up under stress. Like a 7 goes to a 1 and become the house is finally clean and, because I'm stressed out. And that's like the one thing I can control. So I think that regardless of the tool that an organization uses, I think it is imperative that organizations use personality tests with their leadership team at a minimum, and
Mhm.
ideally as part of their hiring and placing process. I think that you can head off a lot of bad matches or bad placements at the pass if you are more aware of your team members' personalities. One thing that we've started using recently too at Belay is work by Kathleen Edelman. It's The Temperaments. And there's a
Mm.
book that goes along with it that's I Said This, You Heard That.
Ah.
And it gets into it has a little bit of a disc feel in terms of 4 different quadrants and colors
Mhm.
and all that, but it's almost like a blend, for lack of a better word, of disc and Enneagram. So that's been a really interesting tool to use with our belay team as well, because it's a little bit more descriptive, I think, in a lot of different areas.
That sounds like a great tool. I'll add that into the show notes. Have you found people in the hiring process or people in your leadership team maybe that are like, I don't believe in this personality stuff. It's woo woo and I don't want to be put in a box. How do you address that?
Yeah. I mean, they don't get to work here. I mean, that's how we address that.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I mean, it's an important filtering tool. I don't think it's the end all be all, but if you want to work here, you have to kind of put up with our systems and processes for how we've established it for hiring. I would say that there is one caveat to all of them, is that the person that says, well, I'm a high D, so deal with it, or I'm a high I, and that's just the way I am. No, that means that you get the opportunity to grow just like everybody else. So you can't hide behind your number, your label. You have to be human. And so I think we do a good job to say, like, hey, this is an important part of our hiring process, and you're not to use it as an excuse. But it's been very helpful for our business, and we've learned insights in our teams, and we've learned how to respect each other more, through using tools like DISC or Enneagram.
Hmm. And if you've done several, you do begin to see there's an overlap, which to me is a validity measure when you see it over and over. Awesome. Okay, I want to shift towards the end of our interview here and ask about mentors. Have you guys had a business mentor or a group that you've been part of, like EO or something?
We've hung around people in EO. We've never participated in EO, but we do. We have business mentors that have guided us over time. Typically, they are a season or two ahead of us.
Mm.
I have a lot of gray hair, but they have more.
They have no hair.
Yeah, or no hair. But yeah, we've been very fortunate to get in the damage path of other successful business owners and ask them meaningful questions, and they've cared about us and invested time in us and kind of coached and guided us throughout the way. And I mean, we've also then done the same thing. We paid it forward with, businessmen and businesswomen who have similar backgrounds or faith philosophies and all that, and we walk alongside them where it seems appropriate too. So we definitely want to pay it forward in that sense.
Yeah, probably a couple years into the business, I joined C12, and then it converted to a different type of group called For. And that definitely served a purpose during that season for sure. But as of late, our key business advisors come from our family office. We run a lot of opportunities by them, and they help us think through the long-term impact of starting new organizations or investing in ones that other people have started, or, big decisions around the organization. So that's probably the group currently that we lean into the most heavy right now.
Okay. And do those advisors, mentors, do you talk to them about your marriage also, or do you have separate advisors that are relationship oriented?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like to say that not all mentors are created equally. Like when we approach a mentor, it's because we're looking for a specific piece of advice. Like we're not going to go ask a mentor that's been married 3 times how to have a successful marriage. They're not the right person to ask that question to. We're going to go to but they will have a lot of great things to say about a successful business.
Right.
So they're just not all equal in that sense. So we're typically going to go ask of the ones that we think are qualified in those areas or arenas.
Gotcha. You guys have been wonderful guests. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up today?
I would just say it's incredibly rewarding to walk alongside a person that you love and then create a business or businesses together. Like, I had no idea. I only guessed what it could be before. And now 10 years of doing this together, I'm so grateful for this experience. And I think that if you're aiming at a great marriage and that's your focus and where you're headed, then all the other stuff will line up because you got your priorities straight and where you're headed. And it's incredibly rewarding to see a business kind of fueled as a vehicle of that. But having a lasting marriage, I think, is far more important. And I'm incredibly grateful to be in a position where God's been really kind to us, but also we've done the hard work as a couple in order to achieve the things that have been put out there for us.
That's so sweet. I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing only as an entrepreneur. And yes, you can seek out mentors, and yes, you can be part of EO and have organizations that support you in different ways. But the work that you're doing to really talk about the intersection of entrepreneurship and marriage is so important. And I think more and more couples are going to start companies. And so the research that you're doing now and the resources that you're pulling together to support them is going to have a lasting impact. So thanks for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you.
Wow. I'm deeply honored and grateful. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, friend. If you enjoyed this episode, it would be a great honor if you would share it with a friend. Giving us a rating and comment on Apple Podcasts really helps with the discovery. And that's the name of the game, getting resources to as many couples as possible. Where else do you get so much value for just the investment of your time? Nothing's coming to mind. So go ahead and subscribe. It's free. And for those that are hard of hearing or prefer reading, you will always find a full transcript at kathyrushing.com. You're building a life together. Make it a great one. See ya.